welcome back to the show. Hope you're having a great Saturday so far. And this is the last hour of our show, and we are going to go all out climate brawl here. Been talking about the thread that's been going on here for like over a month now on Twitter. It's a fascinating thing. Big fight over climate change. What is the real impact? And again, my only conclusion really at this point, and I actually hate to say this, is that it's actually a cult. It is an official cult. I've never seen anything quite like this. So in answer for all of this, I want to bring on my next guest, Gregory Wrightstone. He is a geologist with more than 35 years of experience researching and studying various aspects of the Earth's processes. He's been on the program before. He is the author, as you know, of Inconvenient Facts. You can also get his app, Inconvenient App. You definitely want to check this guy out. But like right now, let's get him on the phone and let's talk to him. Gregory, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, great to be back on. Yeah, you're right about climate change. The hoorah that's going on. It's getting crazier than ever.
It really is. I got to tell you this, because here's how it started for me. So here's this big thread going on with like 1 million people on it. I know there's a lot of people on it. And so they pulled me in, actually, Gregory, because somebody saw a post I had made, a tweet where I had you on the program last time. And so this person had to let me know that you were not qualified. In fact, they told me that you are not actually even a scientist because you don't believe what they believe. You've been de-sciented. But here's the really interesting thing. So I'm getting all this stuff, and I just respond back. I'm not even realizing I'm in this huge thread until I responded, and then bam! Then everybody had to let me know on the other side that you were not credible. They at the time didn't even know what you believe, which I thought was kind of fascinating and also cultish. But the initial person who brought me in to let me know that you weren't credible is a video gamer / DJ. Now, I've never been to DJ.
Wow.
I've never been to DJ school, but I imagine it must be quite impressive. But just what is your thoughts of that, of people getting to decide whether you're even a credible person?
Yeah, well, I get that a lot. I'm a geologist, and they say because I don't have a PhD and I haven't written any specific peer-reviewed papers on climatology, then I'm not qualified to talk. But the funny thing is, I've got a master's and a bachelor's in geology, and I was recently accepted as an expert reviewer for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, AR6. So they accepted me as an expert. So, that's quite a. There aren't a whole lot of us around. I think there's like 160 or whatever there are. So I got accepted as that. So I wear that. I wanted to be on there. So that's some documentation there.
First of all, congratulations. That's great news, and I'm glad to hear that you've been accepted onto that. But here's the thing that I've gotten out of this, is there's this small amount of information that you're allowed to discuss because, again, the peer-reviewed thing, and they've got all these different criteria and rules. So I've only got this little bit of information that I'm allowed to even look at. But now, Gregory, they're telling me what people I can listen to. Is this not the exact opposite of science?
Yeah, it is. I actually, as you know, I've got a publicist, and I had a former. They both got. I'm not going to play it for you, but. They both received hateful voicemails that were just vile, full of F-bombs and cursing their children. And that's the kind of people these people are. They're vile and hateful. And they restrict what you and the people you can have on your show. They want to tell you what you can and can't do, what you can and can't eat, what you can and can't drive. And before long, it'll be what they want is to control every aspect of your being and your life, and that's their main goal. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, and it is. I think the key word, and you just hit it right there, Gregory, is control. It's all about control. And we talked about this last time. We talked about what they're doing to the kids, and I want to go to a recent blog you've got on your site. Everybody, inconvenientfacts.xyz. Check this out. A lot of great stuff in there. But I want to get into this, but let me play this clip for you. I know you've heard this before because you reference it in your in this great article. But I want to play this because I think this is important for people to understand exactly what they're doing to these children. This is a 16-year-old kid, and God bless her, but geez, here's the clip.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean.
Right.
Yet you all come to us young people for hope.
I didn't.
How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And
Your
yet,
parents did that.
I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
It's just sad, Gregory.
There's a lot to deconstruct. Yeah, there's a lot to deconstruct there. First, she came to the United States. She didn't want to fly to reduce her carbon footprint on a racing yacht that was made entirely of the very petroleum products she wants to ban, which is ironic in itself. And then there were at least 4 transatlantic flights to fly the crew back and forth, so she wouldn't have to take one plane trip. She says, how dare you? How dare she? How dare she lecture us? And she just has, it's not so much that she doesn't know a lot about the true climate facts, the inconvenient facts that you and I have talked about. It's just that how much of what she thinks she knows is just flat out wrong. She's wrong about this. And the main thing we can point to, and I do in the article, is point out how wrong she is about this 6th mass extinction. And she refers in that probably to the UN report that was released 2 months ago, where they predicted 1 million species going extinct over the next several decades. Well, I researched that and exposed it for the fraud that it is. What they did in this UN report looked at extinctions going back to the year 1500. And they had a graph that showed extinctions just skyrocketing. But they did it on a century-by-century basis. I went back and looked at the exact same data. It's called the IUCN Red List. Who knew, but it's all things extinction-related are there. And I looked at it on a decade-by-decade basis and found that species extinctions had peaked in the late 1800s, and they've been in significant decline ever since. Well, the UN to get to 1 million extinctions that they're predicting over several decades, you would need to have 25,000 to 30,000 species going extinct per year. The average over the last 40 years, now you ready for it? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Two per year. Oh, well, they're going to get to 30,000 pretty soon. No, they're not. No, they're not. We should be very, very proud that we in America and around the world are taking really, really good care of endangered species, and the species are profiting from that which we're doing. We should be very proud of that, and we should be proud also of what's going on in the environment. The EPA just last week released their review of 2018 and looked back really since the beginning of the 20th century. And boy, what a fantastic report, just showing just how much pollution has declined, how our air and water is cleaner today than it's ever been since they started measuring it, and it's getting better and better and better every year. But that's not what we hear, and that's not what Greta's telling us. And plus with Greta, you got me on a roll now, but with Greta, she comes from the most spoiled, coddled generation ever. I went to one of those climate strikes, and I had a film crew with me. We actually provided material for Fox News that evening, and I was interviewing these young people, and I asked each one of them, well, what are you willing to give up right now? That are you have an iPhone, are you willing to give that up? Not one person was willing to do that. Oh, well, I thought it was an existential crisis. Well, apparently not if they're not even willing to give up their iPhone.
Yep. So, and when you talk about that reminds me, and I wish I had the clip handy for that. I remember Barack Obama here recently, maybe a year and a half ago, and he was giving a speech, and he was talking about how we have to take action and we have to do all these things. And he looked at everybody and he said, this is not going to affect you in any way. You'll still be able to use your phone just as much. You'll be able to drive just as much. You'll be able to, how is that possible when he's also talking about cutting back electricity and energy? And it's a conflicting thing, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And Paul Dreesen just had a study that just came out this week, and he looked at what it would really take in terms of wind and solar to completely replace electricity generation in the United States. And he concluded for wind only to replace our other electric needs, it would take an area the size of 10 times the size of Arizona to have enough wind turbines to completely replace that. And I like to make the point too, I've been lately, we're being told this is an existential threat. The world is not going to survive this unless we make changes. Well, we can't replace our electricity generation using wind and solar. You just can't do it. But so I'm not coming on your show without a solution. So my solution here for you and the listeners, hydroelectric is a wonderful electricity generation source. Look at Lake Powell and the Hoover Dam and all these facilities provide huge amounts of electricity. I think we should build a dam on the Colorado River and dam up the Grand Canyon and use that as hydroelectric facility. Now, granted, the Grand Canyon's, it's awfully beautiful, but, sacrifices need made, and if that's what it's going to take, and it's really a crisis, an existential threat, you should be willing to do that. But, when you say that, heads are exploding around the country right now. They're not going to do that. So it's not an existential threat? We don't have to dam up the Grand Canyon? Well, we're going to have to find ways to get that electricity generated. And like I say, again, you can't do it with wind and solar.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. I want to get into this because when people go to your website, and I highly recommend that they do, it's inconvenientfacts.xyz. Check it out. You've got a really interesting thing in here, and I think this is really somewhat the crux or the core of this entire debate, which has been deemed over by one side, which again is the opposite of science, but that's another story. Mm-hmm. But you talk about the 99% consensus, and here's why this is important. I've got coming up in the show later in the program, I've got a physicist on the program that's going to join me, and he's one of the 500 authors of this letter that was just submitted to the UN.
As am I.
As are you. Absolutely fantastic. I didn't even know that. That's great. So here's the thing. If 500 people, Gregory, just submitted this letter, and that's supposed to represent only the 3%, then we must have a lot more scientists than I'm aware of. Talk about what the point you make about the 97% consensus.
Well, if you look at it, it was exposed. One of my editors, Lord Christopher Monckton, did that with another colleague of mine, David Legates, actually looked at the data of the study that was written by John Cook that goes to that 97% consensus supposed, and they actually looked at the actual data, and they came up that actually less than 1% of the scientists that they listed actually believed what they were saying in terms of that global warming is primarily man-made and it's going to lead to catastrophic consequences. So less than 1%. And when I talk, I'll be speaking next week in Columbus, Ohio, to a gathering of geologists and geoscientists. There'll be about 500 there. And virtually when I speak to geologists and we look at the big picture, I find that most geologists I talk to believe just as I do. And what I believe is that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. It's causing some warming effect on the atmosphere, but it's very modest and overwhelmed by those same processes, either astrophysical, solar, or geological, that have been the natural driver of temperature changes throughout Earth's history. And my talk I'm giving there next week will be on it's called Unusual, Unprecedented. It's a look at temperature and climate throughout geologic history. And then I'm going to have a panel discussion with a fellow that speaks before me from Penn State who's died in the wool believer of the consensus opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds amazing. And I know the Moncton name is going to really got some heads spinning out there right now. So we've got a lot of these people that are in this thread who are now listening to us. So yeah, I'm sure they're flipping out on that. But let's get into this, because one of the points I've been making, last thing here, I want to give you a chance to talk about your book. The point I've been making is I think Al Gore was probably the most, it's the worst thing that ever happened to their argument. The fact that he took this thing over, became the official kind of spokesperson, made it political, did a lot of damage, I think, to their side of this. You have an amazing book out there that I want everybody to read. It's called Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. Tell my listeners who are maybe listening for the first time to listen in on this conversation, tell them about your book.
Yeah, and I didn't set out to write a book. As a scientist and a geologist, I knew that some of what we were being told about climate change, and really it was ocean acidification, is what I just knew that it's never happened in geologic history, even when CO2 levels were 15 and 20 times what they are today. And I knew that was wrong, and I suspected other things were wrong. And the book was really the result of my search for the truth. And that's what I got. And actually the book now, it was just this week, it was the #1 bestseller on Amazon in 3 categories. In the environmental studies category, it just went to #2. Got beaten out by Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. It's #1 bestseller in that category, but I'm #2, this book. And so it's really been a book that continues to increase in popularity. It's people that get it and read it, because it's written, as you know, for non-scientists with 90 full-color figures and illustrations that are easily understood. And then we've got a companion smartphone app that's powerful. I don't know if you've gotten that yet. If you don't,
yes,
and you haven't, isn't it awesome?
It is, absolutely.
You can get that information, put it right in the palm of your hand. So you can confront those in a conversation. You can just pull it out and go to fact number 52 with 60 years of polar bear population history. To have that right there in the palm of your hand. So it's powerful tool.
Well, it's been very helpful to me in this climate brawl thing that I'm ensnared in right now. Gregory Wrightstone, thanks so much for your time. Keep up the great work, and everybody go check out inconvenientfacts.xyz. Get the app, get the book. This is all really good stuff and very pertinent to all those that are in the thread listening to the show right now. Gregory Wrightstone, thank you so much for your time, and let's do this again sometime.
Thank you very much.
All right, Gregory Wrightstone. It's incredible stuff, and I've talked about this with the Al Gore factor. So people, the big thing. So this conversation, it comes back to a couple things. So once you get into a point where you start throwing facts, first they get dismissed, then people get dismissed, but you keep throwing at them, and you know it flusters them, and they always come back to 2 things. One is religion. Oh, you believe in the guy in the sky, and it's which another way to saying you're crazy. It's the same thing as Barack Obama when he said, I don't have time for the meeting of the Flat Earth Society, you're stupid. It's the same thing with the 97% thing. You're one of those 3% people. Oh, it's the whole thing with, if you want to take it outside of climate change, look at, just in general politics, look at the class warfare thing with the 1%, right? Because it's so brave to go, to try to team up 99% of the people against 1% of the people. The 97% thing is the same deal. But it always comes back to politics, and it comes back to religion. Those are the 2 things. And you know that you've got them. When they do that, when they bring it back to that, they can't stand on their facts. But I say this again, and I am not a scientist. That's why I have 2 scientists on the program here today. I am not. But here's the point. If you're going to hand people information, there's all this, there's a whole room full of information, but you say, okay, it's only this right here, and it stops here and here. This is the only thing you can look at, and these are the only people you can talk to. That is the exact opposite of science. This is not complicated. Again, I am not a scientist, but I do at least understand that element of it. But again, I think really we just got to eat the babies.
We only have a few months left. I love that you support the Green Deal, but it's not getting rid of fossil fuel. It's not going to solve the problem fast enough. A Swedish professor saying, we can eat dead people, but that's not fast enough. So I think your next campaign slogan has to be this: we got to start eating babies. We don't have enough time. There's too much CO2. All of you're pollutants. Too much CO2. We have to start now. Please, you are so great. I'm so happy that you're really supporting the Green Deal, but It's not enough. You know, even if we would bomb Russia, we still have too many people, too much pollution. So we have to get rid of the babies. That's the big problem. Just stopping having babies is not enough. We need to eat the babies.
In the fight not only to defeat Trump